Hey everybody, this is Kevin and welcome to the next build in our build series on the Estes rockets. And today we've got the Ripley Rocket. It's an all-new release from Estes. It's a rather small rocket. It runs on half and mini A motors, which are your 13mm motors. And it advertises going up about 600 feet. It's a little over a foot long at 13.3 inches, and it comes down under streamer recovery. It is an intermediate build. And I'm going to say the probable reason for that is the design of the fins. If you look, it's got some little fin tabs and this very interesting little fin cradle, so to speak, at the attachment of the tube. So that's a little unique, little extra woodworking there. So let's go ahead and get this opened and do a quick inventory check, and then we'll get right into the build. Okay, first and foremost, it's a beautiful looking little rocket, especially the color scheme that they've chosen. The black with green fins and the purple nose cone. And what looks to be like a... I tell you, I can't tell if it's a palm tree or some sort of insect, like a scorpion or something, but it's a very unique little design there on the top of the tube. So let's set that aside. Let's get the parts emptied out of the bag. Okay, let's get this little mini bag opened as well. Okay, take care of the warranty later. Set everything aside. Oh, there's our bright streamer. Now, I will point out real quick, if anyone here has built the Orange Bullet rocket, this is very reminiscent of the Orange Bullet as far as these tabs on the tips of the fins. So very unique design there. All right, so let's get the manual opened up and take a look at the inventory, and we'll do our quick inventory list. Okay, our inventory list is going to consist of, and we'll go through these in order here. Starting off with the motor mount. Again, this is a 13mm motor mount for the mini engines. Then we've got a nose cone, and the nose cone comes with a nose cone. They call it the nose cone pin. It's like a plug, so we've got both of those. We've got two green rings. These are centering rings to hold the motor mount inside the body tube. We've got a mylar ring, and this is what will go over the motor tube and clamp down our engine hook, which we have right here. Again, this is a mini motor hook for the 13mm motors. And we've got the yellow engine block. This will be inserted up into the motor tube to keep the motor from blowing forward up into the rocket itself. We have our launch lug. We have our shock cord, which is plenty long enough. This is really long for this size rocket. We've got our streamer, which is your typical bright orange Estes streamer. Got the main body tube here, typical BT-20, fairly common size rocket tube there. We've got our laser cut fins, looks to be about 1/8 inch, possibly 3/32. I'm going to say 3/32 inch. We've got the little adapter pieces that the fins glue onto that will eventually then glue onto the body tube. Again, we've got those little tabs that glue onto the bottom of each fin. And last but not least, we've got our decal set, which there it is. And that is really, really cool looking. Still can't quite tell what that design is, but I like it. It's really, really sharp. So there you have it. We're going to go ahead and clear the board and get right into the assembly of the Ripley rocket. Okay, first step, we're going to build the motor mount. A pretty straightforward process, typical of most Estes kits. We're going to take our motor tube here and we're going to make a couple lines on it. We're going to make a note at the 1/2 inch mark, which is going to be right there, and also at the 1.5 inch, which is down this way. Which, interestingly enough, is a 1/2 inch from both ends. So it's either, 1/2 inch from both sides, basically, is what we're doing. First thing we want to do after that is make a notch in the forward mark. Take our X-Acto knife and we're just going to cut a little 1/8 inch slot. Maybe wiggle it a little bit to make some extra room, and we're going to make sure that the hook fits nicely in there. There it goes, pops right in nice and clean. And then we're going to take our pencil, and I'm going to extend this line a little out beyond the hook because the hook actually covers up our previous mark. So I've got that mark. Now we want to take our Mylar ring, which is the more or less the clear plastic one, and we're going to slide it on and we're going to glue it over the hook up to that line that we drew. Okay, so I'm going to back this off just a little bit. I'm going to take some wood glue and just put a little bit. It doesn't take much at all. Just enough to hold the ring in place. Kind of wipe that a little bit to spread it and to remove some, because I think I put a little more than I needed to on it. And then we're just going to twist the Mylar up to our mark and just let it sit there. Straighten up your hook and let that dry. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we can go ahead and wipe down a little bit the little excess that got smeared off the edge. And we want to take our engine block, which is the yellow ring, and it's going to be inserted above the engine hook and then be pushed down into it. So let's just take a little bit of wood glue and put it right at the top of the tube. That way the thrust ring will get pushed down through it. Okay, and then you can just take your knife and push it down until it hits the top of your engine hook. And there you go. Not quite sure. I don't think the light's getting in there well enough to see, but it's definitely in there. Oh, let me turn a little light on here. That should help out. There we go. Now you can see the yellow hook, or the yellow ring up against the hook. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is take one of our green centering rings and we're going to glue it on the forward end of the tube. Now you may want to take your fingernail and just slightly open up that ring a little bit so it fits over the tube a little bit easier. Yeah, just like that. Okay, now that it fits, we'll go ahead and run a ring of glue. And we're going to put it flush to the motor tube. So once we get it started, we can actually just press it down on our workbench and get it flush that way. And then any little excess that was pushed up, we can wrap with our finger and make a fillet out of it. There we go. Just like that. Okay, while that's drying, you want to take your other ring, and here's where it gets a little unique. I hadn't seen this before, at least it's been a while. if I have ever. But you want to cut out a 1/8 inch notch out of this ring, making it a split ring. Typically Estes will send this to you pre-notched. And we'll just cut 1/8 of an inch off. There. Just like that. Now it's a split ring. And this is going to glue on to the bottom end of the tube and go around the engine hook. Okay, so now we can take our glue again, run another ring. Now this one you definitely want to be careful and not get glue on your engine hook, because the engine hook is going to have to be able to lift up and down to get the motor in and out. So we'll just wrap that around the tube. Wipe off any excess. Okay. Now this one we're going to have to let it dry a little bit before I run a fillet, because there was no glue that was actually pushed up out of the way per se. So anyway, we're just going to let this sit and dry, and then we'll come back and I'll do a fillet off camera. That's simple enough. And then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, the next step in the build is the preparing of the fins. Now, since our motor tube is off to the side drying, it gives me a good opportunity to go ahead and get the fin started. Now I will tell you a little trick I came up with. While the split ring tends to want to open up on you, while it's drying, you can simply slide it into the end of one of the body tubes ends there, and it'll help hold that split ring closed and down into the glue while it dries. So just a little trick there to help hold it for you. But as far as the fins, now they call for just sanding them, priming them, sealing them, and smoothing them out. But if you've seen any of my previous build videos, you know I love to sheet with polystyrene plastic. I just love the way it gives you a chance to, when you glue it down, it helps flatten the fins. It also creates a nice smooth surface for the paint to adhere to and leave, in my opinion, a little bit smoother of a finish. But again, that's just personal preference, and I'm going to do it that way on this build. But if you don't have the means of getting the plastic, or you don't want to go through that hassle, understand, just completely understandable. Just sand this as smooth as you can get it, prime it, sand it, prime it, sand it until it's like glass, and then it's ready for paint. So we can go ahead and cut these out. There's a few little tabs here. Looks like maybe 4 of them for each fin. There we go. And we'll go ahead and do all 3 fins. This balsa is very lightweight. It's very soft, which is going to be easy sanding when we get to that point. This piece might be a little tougher balsa. You can see the grain's a little darker than it is on this side, and you can feel it within the knife. There's a definite difference. See, and it didn't even cut all the way through. So just fun facts about balsa. Okay, so I always save my templates in case I ever have to make a new fin. If one ever breaks on me, I've got the template. I can just trace out a new fin on new balsa wood. So always hold on to your spare balsa. Okay, now we want to take all 3 fins, line them up, and what we're going to do is we're going to sand them together to get them all equal and even. So let's just get started like that, and we'll just do a few passes over. This is 220, so a little bit rougher, and I like to sand it down just until you see the dark sooty portion of the balsa on the paper. That's the residue carbon from the laser cutting process. See, now you can see that's all, the black is mostly gone and they're all even with each other. So now we'll just rotate it and do it another side. The main thing too you're looking for is just to get the little notches that we just cut out, to sand those little nubs off. That's the key thing here. But we also want to do this to make all the fins uniform with one another. And this will be our last side. All right, perfect. So we got 3 identical fins. Now this particular model does not call for rounding the leading edges of the fins. They call for leaving them square, which from a builder's perspective, that's ideal because that's a lot easier to do. So I will gladly build it that way. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take my plastic sheet and I'm just going to cut out a little bit of a square here that all 3 can fit into. Okay. Now we're going to get out a piece of cardstock, and I like to use popsicle sticks to spread my epoxy with. Got a few here. Okay. We'll take our epoxy. Whenever you're building, always have paper towels on hand because you never know what little chemicals and things you might end up with on your fingers, and you don't want to spread that to the other surfaces. So, okay, so now we're just going to simply mix up our Part A and Part B epoxy. Now this is 5-minute epoxy, so it's going to dry relatively quick, which is good because given an hour or 2 to harden, then I can cut these out and then glue the other sides on. I won't do the other side on camera because it'll be the same process. So 2 things you want to focus on here is 1, you just want to make sure that you've got no dust or debris on the plastic. Blow off any dust that might be on the fin. And then just lay down your epoxy, spread it. Now what's interesting about this is you're going to spread the epoxy all over the fin, and then the next thing you're going to do is you're going to take it all off. And when I mean all off, you're going to scrape it both ways until all you see is a sheen, like a glossy, I don't know if I can turn it to get the light on it. There you can kind of see the gloss. That means it is coated, but we took most of it off. Okay, then we're just going to lay this down on our plastic. Okay, that's 1. Okay, I'm going to scrape it off. Lay our second piece down. And go for our third piece. Okay, now I'm going to go lay this under some weights, under some pieces of plywood that I've got created. That'll help flatten the wood and solidly secure the plastic to the balsa. And once that cures, I'll take it out and I'll show you the process of cutting it out, and we'll do the other side. Okay, now that the fins are out of the press, they are solidly glued to the plastic. I'm going to show you how I trim them out, and then I will glue them to the other half off camera, because again it's the same process. One thing I want to point out, if any of you were paying attention to my building of the motor mount, you probably noticed an error. I, for whatever reason, glued the forward centering ring flush with the motor tube, and it should have been down up against the engine hook. I don't know why I misread the instructions. I just, somehow I did. That being said, I thought about starting a whole new motor mount, and then I realized, you know, it's not going to be that consequential. If anything, by me being more forward, we might get more support out of it. But that's just me making an excuse for my poor building there on that step. So just when you build yours, keep in mind that the instructions do call for gluing the forward centering ring down up against the engine hook, not up at the edge flush like that. So just wanted to get that out there. I did make an error, and in case some of you were screaming at your screens when I did that, now you know that I heard your screams. So we'll set that aside. Now when it comes to cutting out the fins, I use the fin itself as my cutting guide. So I've got a fresh blade on my knife here. I'm just going to put the blade up against the balsa and slowly draw down along the side. It may take a pass or two. You may encounter some difficulty at times, and that's going to be you hitting the epoxy, because as we glued it on, some of the epoxy got squeezed out, and that is going to interfere with the cutting. So like I said, you may hit some speed bumps along the way. That's just the epoxy. Just take your time and you'll get right through it. Don't be tempted, and I'm feeling it right now, the temptation to speed up. As you get going on this process, you feel like you're really going like gangbusters, and then you speed your cutting up, and then you end up messing up your cut. Let's see, did I get it? I'm missing just a little bit up in this corner here. There we go. Perfect. That is one beautiful sheeted fin. So I'm going to go ahead and do the other two, get them cut, and then get all three of these glued onto this half, and then these fins will be done and ready for applying our little tabs on the ends of them. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and make the markings on the body tube for the fins and the launch lug. Now you'll notice here the tube has changed colors a little bit. You can see that the spirals are filled in and kind of a grayish color on the surface, but I use my technique where I spray the body tube down with Rust-Oleum gray primer, the cheap stuff, and then I immediately clean it all off with lacquer thinner. And I did that 3 or 4 times on this. I'm pretty sure, I think it was 3 coats, and it does help fill in those spirals. So when it comes to painting, you're not going to see the spiral lines anymore. So that's just why you see that little discoloration there on the tube. And another thing I like to do is, even though the manual comes with the marking guides to cut out, I like to make a photocopy of the manual and then cut out my own. That way I keep the manual intact. That's just my own little thing. Everyone's got their way of doing things, and whatever works for you is what you should do. But let me go ahead and cut out this copy that I made. Okay, and while I'm at it, I'll go ahead and cut out my shock core too, because that's going to come up here near the end of the build. Just have it ready to go. Okay, so I'm going to set that aside so I don't lose it. We can discard the scrap paper, but now it's time to wrap this around our body tube, and I like to get some masking tape, and I'm going to go ahead and have a piece ready to go first. Okay. We want to fold it around and get those notch marks lined up with each other, just like that. And then we'll tape the whole wrap together. And then another thing I like to do is, you notice how it rotates. So take another little sliver of masking tape. It doesn't take much at all, just enough to adhere it to the tube. Just lay this down somewhere to keep it from rotating. And then take a pencil. Always use pencil, don't use marker or pen, because when you paint it, the chemicals in the paint will dissolve the ink and it'll come up to the surface and it'll totally wreck your paint job. So don't use that, just use pencil. So let's make a mark here for a fin. Let's make our mark here for our launch lug. Another fin. And our last fin. Okay. Remove the tape. You can just slide that right off. And for actually marking the tube, they say to use a door frame or any other straight surface. I like to use the jig that they actually produce for making markings on the tube. So just line this tube up on the guide with our marks. And draw your lines. Here's our launch lug. And our final fin. Okay, there we have it. See all the lines, and you can verify they're straight just by looking down the length of the tube, and they are perfectly parallel with the body tube. Okay, so these are all set to go. Now we'll move on to getting the fin set. Okay, now we're going to prepare our balsa strips for our fin placement. What they call for is to take them and make a mark on the leading edge, 10 millimeters or 3/8 of an inch. And we'll make our mark there, there, and there. Okay, now I'm going to cut these out. I'll cut the first one out first and just kind of show you my plan of attack on how I'm going to prepare these. Okay, they just pop right out. Now I'm going to take a little sliver of masking tape and put it right up to that mark that we made. And I'm going to take some sandpaper. In this case, I got my little sanding block, and I'm going to sand this down to the taper till it's tapers down to the point at the bottom. And I'm going to use my tape as my reference. So I'll tell you, it's probably going to be easier to do it this way. And periodically stop and check, kind of see where you're at so you don't overdo anything. We're making progress here. Almost done. This light balsa wood does not take long at all. Just sand down. There we go. Okay, so that is it for the first one. You can see the taper there. See if I can get this to focus. Okay, so I'm going to do the remainder of the other two in the same fashion, and then these are almost ready to glue onto our body tube. One more thing I want to do first though. Okay, the last little thing I want to do before we glue the fins onto the body tube is, because these are square sheets, I want to place a little bit of curvature on the underside so it'll mate with the body tube a little bit better. So here I just got some 220 sandpaper and wrapped it around the body tube because that's the proper curvature. And then I'm just gently going to run this vertically up and down to put that curve, like I said, into the underside of the balsa stock. Doesn't take much. I don't want to, burn through the whole wood here. Just enough to take off a little bit of that center part. With the naked eye, it's visible. I'm not quite sure if you can see that curvature in there, but there's slight curvature, and now this will mate much nicer to the body tube. Okay, so I'm going to do the other two off camera, and then we'll be ready to go for gluing the fins onto the body. Okay, now we're going to install the little bottom tabs on each fin. I'll do one as an example, and you'll notice the shape of these. It's a perfect rectangle with one exception. There's a little notch right there in the corner, and that notch is very important. We need to line it up precisely on the fin, and I'll show you where that goes. But let's go ahead and cut these out. This is just cardstock, so your sharp X-Acto should go through it like butter. Okay, there's one. And if you need to sand off just a little bit for those nubs, you can. They do sand. And we'll get all 3 nubs sanded off there. Okay. Now, because I've coated the fins with plastic styrene, I can't use wood glue. So I'm going to just use a simple CA glue, the gel type. And it shouldn't take more than 1 drop, and we should be good to go. So if you look at the shape of the fin, we're going to want to put that notch on the bottom in line with the inside edge. If you can see that there, that notch lines up with the angle of the fin. So I'm just going to put 1, maybe 2 drops of CA glue. There. Line this into position. Press. Okay. And I did one already. Let's go ahead and do the other side of the same fin just to remain consistent. Okay, goes just like that. I'm using the bench as a more or less a platform to keep it straight with the bottom of the fin. There we go. That focuses there. You can see that notch is in line with that center of the fin. Okay, so that takes care of our first fin. I will do the other 2 off camera, and then we'll be about ready to attach these to the body tube. Okay, now that the fins are all set to go, we can go ahead and start gluing the parts onto the body tube. Now, if you know anything about the way I build, when I do my fins, even though I use the lines that they give us, I like to offset everything just to the right side of the lines. Instead of centering this fin cradle on the line, I'm going to center it. I'm actually going to line it up to the right side of the line and use the line as my reference. I find that to be a lot easier than trying to align it by sight on the center. Let me sand the sides off just a little bit to clean up the little nubs, and this one's ready. We've already got the curvature built in. Okay, now I'm going to also just do a little bit of touch up with some sandpaper on the body tube to give the cradle a little bit more purchase to glue to. Again, I'm just to the right side of the fin lines. Okay. We'll draw a line down the stick, and then we'll just smear it with our finger. We'll wipe off any excess. Okay. And then again, I'm just going to line it up to the right side of our lines. And we can use our bench as a template to get it flat on the bottom and flush. Okay, that looks good. Okay, we'll let that sit and we'll do our next one. Okay, that's 2, and then 3. Oh. Okay, just go over everything one last time before you let it sit and dry. Everything looks good. Okay, we're all set. Now we're just gonna let this dry and then we'll be ready to glue the fins onto the cradles. Okay, now that our balsa cradles are dried and perfectly straight in alignment, it's time to glue the fins on. As you can see, I've got all the little tabs already glued on to each fin. And we're gonna do these the way I typically do my balsa fin attachments is I'm going to take one fin, just draw a thin bead of glue down the root, spread it with my finger, and then I'm going to place this right on the center line of the cradle that we already installed. Okay, I'm going to wiggle a little bit and then I'm going to remove it. What that did was it laid down just a small amount of glue that we're going to let air dry, and then it'll tack up on us and it'll stick better when we reattach it. So it's going to take about a minute for that to dry. So I'm going to set that aside, and in the meantime I can get our second fin going. Okay, find our next location here. Lay it down. Roll it just a little bit to spread the glue. Perfect. Gonna let that dry. Now, by now, the first fin has already tacked up and is ready. So now we can attach this permanently. Kind of do an alignment from behind. Okay, now our second fin is ready. Make sure it looks good. And this is, I'll tell you, this is one of the reasons why I don't like centering my fins. I like running them up against the line for reference, because it takes a lot of this tedious fiddling out of the equation. But okay, there's number 2. And we'll do number 3 next. Okay, so we'll let that sit, and while that's tacking up on me, let me just do some more sights from behind. This looks good. This one looks good. Now, one thing I'll mention, and I'll mention it again later, but when it comes time to gluing the launch lug on, you'll notice now the launch lug is not centered between these two because everything's shifted over to the right. So when we glue the launch lug on, we're gonna have to glue it to the right side of the line, and then it'll be spaced evenly between the two fins. So just something to keep in mind. I hadn't neglected that concept yet. Just something you gotta be ready to adjust for. Okay, so now I think this third one's tacked up and ready to go. We'll lay it in position. Okay, I think that's good. Press a little more firmly to hold it. Okay, let's look from behind. Let's see if I can get an overhead for you. See how all the fins are perpendicular to the body tube and evenly spaced, 120 degrees between one another. So, all right, so that wraps that up. We're gonna let that cure and harden. And this is going pretty quickly. We're almost ready for paint. So let me just set this aside and let this dry completely, and we'll get right back to it. Okay, now that the fins have had a chance to dry, we're going to go ahead and glue on our launch lug. And remember, we're going to set the launch lug just to the right side of our reference line. So let me just scuff that up just a little bit. And we need to mark 1 inch up from the base. So let me grab a ruler here and we'll make a mark at the 1 inch line. Right there. So that's the base of the launch lug. So we're going to put the launch lug right there. Okay. Let me scuff the launch lug up just a little bit. Okay, we'll take some wood glue. Run a thin bead. Okay, and we're going to set this just to the right side of the line, like I said. And we'll adjust it to get perfect position. Okay, that looks good. You see, looking right down the, looking down the barrel of a rifle there. Okay, so that's in position. We're going to let that sit and dry, and then once it cures, we can come back and put in some fillets for strength. And then she'll be ready for primer and paint. Okay, now that the launch lug is dry with the wood glue, I've taped the bottom and the top end of it, and we're going to lay down some epoxy fillets on either side in preparation for our primer and paint. So I've already got my rock epoxy pre-mixed, and I will go ahead and get some on a popsicle stick here and just run it into that groove. Okay, and I've got a fresh popsicle stick here I'm going to use to actually draw out the fillet. Do another one here, another pass. Okay, pretty good. And we'll do the same on the other side. And we'll try to get that crevice filled in, and then we'll just draw it down. Perfect. Okay, now I'm going to peel this off, but the key to the final cleanup on this is a Q-tip and rubbing alcohol. That's what you're going to want to use to do final cleanup here, because inevitably you're going to have a little bit of overflow. So we'll clean up this little line that's on the lug. Just like that. And not that it would hurt anything, but we did get some epoxy up against our wood cradles, which again doesn't hurt, but aesthetically I want it to look like the other two, so I'm going to get the epoxy out of that groove down there. Okay. Okay, perfect. All right, so now we've got our fillets done. Let me zoom in on you there. Okay, so we're gonna let that dry, and I'm gonna take this out and paint it in primer off camera, and yeah, next time you see it, it'll have some paint on it. Okay, as you can see, we've finally reached the point of putting on the decals. And also, as you can see, a lot has changed with the Rocket since last time you saw it, the last segment. The painting is done. We finally got all the painting done. It took a little while. I'll tell you, the masking around these fins was not the easiest job. But if you take your time and just be diligent, you'll get it. I used Krylon. I want to say it was called Jungle Green paint. Gloss Jungle Green. Kind of gives you that neon color that the face card shows. Let me show you the face card here. So it's close enough for my purposes. I think it's pretty darn close. And then up front, I've got the purple for the nose cone, and of course gloss black on the body. So really, we just have to lay down 3 decals. One Estes logo on a fin, the main body tube, and then up at the top of the tube, this creature looking thing. At first I thought it was a palm tree, and now the more I look at it, it looks like some sort of scorpion looking creature, but whatever it is, it's rather bizarre looking. Okay, so let me go ahead and position the rocket horizontally. I do want to cut the decals out. We'll go ahead and let's see, let's start with the name. Okay, so that's going to lay down right about there, just like that. Although I want to leave, you know, scale-wise, to be honest with you, I'm not really thrilled with the scale of this. And the reason I say that is, let me cut out the, whatever this thing is. If it mounts or applies right there, as the face card shows, oh, that glare is probably making it hard to see. The word Ripley gets you darn near close to the green stripe, whereas here we've got a good maybe 1 inch between the 2 decals, and then it's just not a lot of space. I don't really care for the dimension of the decal as per the face card, to be honest with you. So I'm going to have to apply this as close to the top as possible, and this one as close to the bottom as possible, and we can make it work. Just not quite the scale as it shows in that diagram. So, but anyway, that being said, let's go ahead and get these dipped in. Well, let me go ahead and cut this one out too as well for the fin. Okay. Okay, let's go ahead and do this one first. And again, I'm going to have to position it as close to the top, I think, as possible. I can go ahead and get this soaking as well, since it's going to be not far behind. I got my paper towel ready. I've got a couple Q-tips here that we're going to use to work with. Always have some tweezers available as well. Give that a minute to break up. So all three decals are going to be on this front-facing side to the rocket. The scorpion looking thing, the label, and the fin decal right there. So again, all three, and make sure you do it with the launch lug on the back side. You don't want to mess up and put this on the launch lug side. Okay, let's see if this is breaking up yet. Yep, it's free. Okay, so let's see. I guess this is going to end up wrapping around the entire rocket, pretty much. Let's just get a little more water on there. Yep, they come right around and meet one another on the back side there. Okay, now we'll just kind of roll the paper towel over it, removing any water or air and wrinkles. There. Okay. Looks good. Okay. Weird. All right, we'll do our best here to keep this in between. So I'm going to trim off a little bit of this so we don't risk running into each other, the two decals. Okay. Okay. I think that's about got it right there. So let me go ahead, I'm going to set that out of the way, actually. A little bit of an air bubble there I'm going to work out with the Q-tip. This is an odd looking decal. I wonder if it's a takeoff from the Ripley's Believe It or Not show. That's the only thing I can think of, is this is a very bizarre looking creature. Okay, I think we got it. There we go. Okay, let me go ahead and get this logo decal soaking. Yeah, I think we got it. It's like every time I see it from a different angle, the light shows me a new wrinkle. There, we got it pulled out there. Okay, perfect. Okay, now we'll go with the logo on the fin. Okay, I'm just going to kind of work the angle and try to get it equal with the angle on the face card. There. That looks good. Let me roll that with a Q-tip. There's a little bubble of water that just came out on that last roll, so that was good. Okay, it looks like it's in the right position. Okay, there we have it. The decals are good. I'm going to let this sit for a little bit, and we still need to work on the shock cord mount and installing our motor mount tube, which I'm holding off till the very end. All right, we'll come back to it. Okay, the decals are still drying a little bit, but we can still work with them as they are, but it's time to do the shock cord mount. I'm going to go ahead and make the mount up and do the install all in one. So let me take some wood glue here, and you know the procedure with these trifolds. Let's go ahead and do a pre-fold on one and two, and then over on 3, just like that. Okay, grab my paper towel. We're going to have to clean up our fingers, no doubt. Okay, so let me take some wood glue here, and I'm going to cover 2 and 3 initially. Yeah, I'm going to make a mess. Okay. Take our shock cord mount, and I'm going to lay it. I kind of do like an angle here, a little bit of an angle. That way when I fold it over, it's not folding over on itself as much, so it won't be quite as thick. Okay, now let's put a little glue on top of the shock cord as well, so one sticks to it. Okay, I'm going to fold one over. Press it down nice and flat. And then go ahead and fold all this over onto 3. And make that nice and flat. Okay, I'm going to set this over to the side to dry a little bit, and I'm going to start working on this end of it. Now I can install this end onto the nose cone. So let's remove our nose cone. Oh, well, I'm glad I took that off. I realized we got to put our plug on. That's a very important thing. So let's go ahead and get our plastic cement. Okay, I'm going to run a thin bead of cement. Now, not too much, because we don't want to warp the plastic. Too much will overheat the plastic and misshape it. So grab a toothpick here. I will spread the glue. Take our plug, and after inserting it, just twist it a little bit to help thin it and spread it. Okay, so actually I'm going to set this aside momentarily and take the shock cord mount, and this we're going to go ahead and mount into the body tube now. Okay. Okay, now we're going to shove this up the tube as far as we can go, but definitely far enough to clear the shoulder of the nose cone. So let's get that in there. I'm gonna have to use my pinky finger because this is pretty, BT20 is pretty thin or narrow. There we go. So I'm just putting opposing pressure on the tube on the other side, just to get it flattened in there. There, you can see in the, hopefully you can see down the tube, perfectly circular through there. You don't see any obstructions. That's what we're looking for. Okay, so now with that out like that, I'll go ahead and take this. Let's see if it's, oh yeah, it's already locked up on us, so that's good. And we'll just do a double knot on this one. Okay, now if you notice that tail, if laid down, will stretch across the shoulder and then up onto the nose cone. That is not good. That could possibly jam up when you're putting it in, making it too tight, so at ejection the nose cone will not be able to come out. So let's trim that back to about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch. And then I like to put just a dab of glue on the knot, just to help preventing that knot from coming undone. There we go. So there we have it. Okay, now while this is still setting up and drying a little bit, I want to tell you, I'm not going to show this on camera. It's just a little, it's not all that exciting to watch. It's like watching paint dry, literally. But I'm going to clear coat this with Quick Shine floor polish, floor finish. And it is a floor polish that is, it's made by Holloway House. I picked this up at Lowe's. I think you can get them at Home Depot. I think I've even seen this at Walmart, to be honest with you. The nice thing about this is it's self-leveling. You just paint it on. I use like a 1-inch square foam brush, coat the whole rocket in it. It's self-leveling. It goes on kind of milky white, but it dries crystal clear. And it does not interact negatively with any paints that I've ever used. Any brand of paint that I've ever painted with, this applies nicely onto. It doesn't have a chemical reaction whatsoever. So, and it dries in like 30 minutes to the touch. So this is what I'll be using for the clear coat. Okay, let's see if that's set up well enough yet. Yeah, I don't feel any tackiness. So let's go ahead and fold up our shot cord. We'll get the nose cone put in. And there we have it. We've got to install the motor mount. Now the instructions show the motor mount engine hook in between two fins, not on the front and not on the side of the launch lug. So by process of elimination, we're going to have it in this orientation right here. And this is going to sit flush, the bottom, with the bottom of the rocket tube itself. And I'm going to use some wood glue and a Q-tip to insert the glue up into the tube. Just like that. And then once I start the mount, I'm going to do an additional layer of glue right at the rim for the rear mount to catch. Okay. Okay, sorry about that. I had to take it off camera to get it kind of pressed in. I couldn't really do it at the angle. But you can see I've got the engine mount hook in line with the bare side of the rocket. The other side has the launch lug, and of course the other side is the front side, which would not look too good. So there we go. That wraps up the building of the Ripley rocket. I want to thank you guys for watching, and hopefully you learned some things. I know I did. I learn every build, whether it's a simple build or a more experienced build. Little tricks and tips you can take from this. And if you have any comments on anything you think could be improved upon, please leave a comment down below. I will answer you and entertain your ideas. Guarantee I will. And I want to thank Estes for providing this prototype for me to work on and air for them. It's been a real pleasure to do this for them, and I hope they like it as much as I do. So again, everybody, thanks for watching. Thank you again, Estes, for all that you do for the community, and we will see you in the next build video.